because when I came home after 8 years, I paroled out to my brother's walk-in closet.
I still got 3 years of parole left.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of From Felon to Fabulous. I'm Brenda Ringwood, known as Professor of Change, because I believe change is possible. I also fit the mold from Felon to Fabulous because, change is real, but you have to want it, and you have to go after it, and you have to make it happen. Tonight's episode is going to be a little different. We have a family member of somebody who was murdered, and she gave the gift of forgiveness. Did you hear me on that? Izzy's tied up tonight. Terrence is tied up tonight. So I got a special guest with us. I'm going to bring up Brian Ramey. Hey, Brian.
Hello, Brenda. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Absolutely. Ready to get this kicked off.
What do you feel about forgiveness?
Well, forgiveness, even though some people think it might be kind of simple and easy, it's not. Mm-mm. And forgiveness truly is about you. It's not about the people that you're forgiving, because it breaks your chains of the bondage you're under. They don't know when you give forgiveness, you no longer have to feel that bondage any longer.
You're right. It's freedom.
But notice I said forgiveness. I didn't say forget.
Yeah, there's a difference. There's a difference. And a lot of people too, you don't have to trust when you forgive.
Nope.
So many things on that. So we're going to bring up Sherry Harris, and we're going to let her share her story.
That's awesome.
Hi, Sherry. Welcome.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
So we just kind of touched on your story. Why don't you fill us in a little bit about what happened? Because you told us you were 21 when this happened, very young.
Ma'am. I had just turned 21. Yes. I want to say July the 22nd, 1990. My mommy had called me. I was at out and about. She had called me. She had my youngest. My youngest was basically like her son. He was 1.5 years. My youngest was 7 months old. So I was out and about. She had got several phone calls from the friend, and he would call and ask for her, and I would say she's not home. I never met him before, but it was just something that I felt over the phone that I just did not like, and she thought maybe I was being mean to him because her and my stepdad had just separated, going through a divorce, and she assured me that they were just friends, that her and my uncle went to school with him, but that wasn't it. It was just something in me I didn't know. I didn't like. So that Saturday morning at 10 a.m., I was getting ready to go to the gym. She stopped me, and she said, I had a dream. She said, I want to talk to you before you leave. And, me was back then being me. And it's like, oh, mama, come on now. I don't want to hear no more about your dreams, you and this, your dreams. But she said she had a dream that I was being murdered. She saw a dream that a woman was being murdered because the life that I was living, out and about, always doing something. And, I was just doing something. So she just assumed that it was me. So I said, okay, Mom. I was like, nothing's going to happen to me. I'm good. She said, no, I want you to hear me. She said, the parents is not supposed to be bearing their child. It's supposed to be the other way around. The child's supposed to bear the parents. And I said, okay, this and that. So when I left the house to go to the gym, he called back again, and he asked for a ride to the store. I wasn't at home to intercept the phone call. She went to pick him up the first time, took him to the store. She comes back home. He calls back later on that afternoon, needed another ride to the store. So she calls me where I was at, asked me to come home to get my son and get the foster kids because she was a foster parent. And I said, I was like, well, why? I was like, you just took, that man to the store earlier. Why you got to go back and take him? She said it was something that he forgot. So I was upset, but I went ahead and I went. By the time I got to the house, she was going out the front door. She stopped. It's like she just knew something. And she stopped and asked for a hug and a kiss. And I said, no. She asked me again, and I said, no. She asked me the third time. I still said no. She walked out. She got in the car, started driving down the street. She forgot something, and she came back. And she comes back through the front door again, and she stops again and asks me the fourth time for another hug and a kiss. And her last words was, you're going to wish you had given me that last hug and kiss.
Oh, no.
And I still said no. So she went through the kitchen, utility room to her bedroom, and there was a back door there because they had the garage converted into a bedroom. So I'm thinking she's going to come back through the front like she did go out the front door, but she went out the back. So I heard the door shut. So for some reason, I just jumped up. And when I jumped up to ran to the door, it was too late. She started going down the street. So I was like, okay, that was around 7. 8 o'clock came. A little after 8 o'clock, I went across the street to my brother's girlfriend at the time, and I asked her for some sugar, for some Kool-Aid. She said she didn't have it. I went back to the house, told the oldest foster kids to come to the house, and I said, watch the kids. I said, don't answer the door, don't answer the phone. I said I would be right back. Got to a certain area in our neighborhood, in the street, and I got to Central and Hillside, and I literally heard a voice say, turn right, go home. If she comes home, you're not there, she's going to be upset with you. So I'm like, dang, I'm just right up the street from the store. I'm like, I can make it, run in real quick and run back home. So by the time I went ahead and turned, then I went back to the house. About 30 minutes later, I wanted some popcorn. So I went across the street again to my brother's girlfriend's house, asked her. She said, I don't have enough popcorn. I thought you went to the store. I said, I did, but I didn't. I went back to the house, told the foster kids, older ones, 2 twins, the same routine. Don't answer the phone, don't answer the door. I'll be right back. I got in my car. I got in the same exact spot, and I heard a voice say, turn right, go home. When I got back to the house, not knowing the reason why I did what I did, I just kept hearing the voice. My mommy had a relationship with God. I didn't. And I never understood why I was hearing the things that I was hearing. So by the time I got back to the house, the second time, about 9 o'clock came, about 1 a.m., there was a knock at the door. So I got up, and the foster kids was all laying in the living room on the floor, sleeping, watching TV. Some were asleep. And I said, who is it? And I opened up the door. He was trying to peep in, and I pushed him and shut the door, and I locked it. And I'm like, who are you? And he was like, they got your mom, they got my uncle. I just want to get her, I come to get her debit card or bank card. All they want is the money. They're going to let her go. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, what's going on? And I was like, do you see a car out there? He was like, no, I don't. I said, well, then that should let you know she ain't here. Unaware of the time. I didn't know it was 1 a.m. at the time. So he was like, don't call the police. And, I'm going to help get her back. So when I locked the door, I ran down to my god sister's house, which was at the corner of our block. There was another man that was standing there next to my god uncle and aunt. He was standing there next to the truck, and he startled me because this is like pitch dark. So I jumped, and I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm like, that ain't the best thing to be doing. I said, you got yourself, knocked out. And I had a very smart mouth. Like I said, didn't mind, didn't care. So I went in the house crying, and my sister picked the phone up, called 911. The man that was at my home that was there walked into my sister's house, opened the door, and just walked in unannounced. And then my family looking at him like, wait a minute, who are you? Oh, she's calling the police. She calling the police. Told the other dude, so they ran, not knowing she was already deceased. You said that you was trying to get her back. I didn't know that she was already deceased. Had no way of knowing that. So years later, the reason why that voice was telling me to turn right, go home, if I had ignored that voice and went to the store, which I've always did, ignored it, my life would have been gone as well. because the first time I left, they were at the first bank, which was across the street from the grocery store. I would have seen her car and I would have went over there. The second time I left, they were up the street from the bank was up the street from the store. I would have seen her car and I would have went over there. So me not knowing, unaware, it was God that was protecting me, was saving me, was keeping me. But when it came down to before the trial came to get the information, I don't know how I knew it. Everything happened. I told the detectives what happened. It's like I seen everything in a dream. Let me just say that I saw everything in a dream, and I was screaming, and I had long nails, and I was clawing at my face and clawing at my arms. My brother came in there, woke me up, and said, "Ann, you dream? What's going on?" He woke me up. My face was bleeding. My arms was bleeding.
Wow.
I literally saw what they was doing to her, and I was screaming, and it was like she couldn't hear me. So when the trial came, the detectives was pulling me out in the hallway and said, "You said you wasn't there." I said, "No, I wasn't." He said, "Well, how did you know X, Y, and Z? And you weren't there. You was at home." I said, "I was home. I wasn't present." But I basically told them everything just about what happened to her and what the guys did to her.
And they already knew that from the investigation.
Yes. Not knowing how I knew about it. And I wasn't for sure, didn't understand, because I didn't have a relationship with God at the time. She did, and I didn't. I didn't have a relationship with God.
Wow, that's crazy. Crazy. So what happened next? I mean, was it more than one person? Was it a group?
It was 4. They actually had got charged with other crimes that started Thursday, Friday, and they kidnapped her Saturday at 7 p.m. They did.
What was the reason for the kidnapping?
They kidnapped my mommy. They kidnapped her at the friend's house, which was the nephew. He was supposed to be ready to go to the store, and he wasn't ready. So she asked, could she come in and use the restroom till he got ready? He said, sure. 5 minutes when she was in there, as she was coming out the bathroom, before she came out the bathroom, there was a knock at his door asking, do he want to buy a VCR? He asked, who are you? And he said his name. And he said, I don't know who you are. And he said, your sister's son. How you gonna not know your nephew? And how you gonna not know your sister? So he played dumb, like he didn't know who it was. So by the time my mommy came out the restroom, the other guy, the older one, the gang member, he bust his way through the door, and the other 3 followed in. And then when they saw her come out the restroom, drying her hands with some paper towel, and he said, hey, y'all, this big, like she got some money, let's take her. And that's how they took her in her car. They put her in the middle. He was driving. She was in the middle. The other guy was on the passenger side. There was one in the back seat. Then when they pretend like they kidnapped the friend, he was in the middle, and the other guy was on his side. When they went to the first bank, when he got stabbed a few times, he got away. When he got away, the grocery store back then was called Food Barn, and it was open. He ran past the whole grocery store, didn't go in there and get the help from the security to call the police. He didn't do anything. He passed the store. I think he went maybe 2 blocks down before he kind of passed out from being stabbed into someone's yard. They played the audio tape. He gave the wrong description of the car. He knew her car. He gave the wrong description of her car. Every detail that he gave. After preliminary hearing was over with, he left and moved to California. He didn't even stay for the trial.
Wow.
He left. When the trial came, my family did go through the preliminary hearing, but they could not go through the court system, through the trial, not even my brother, her siblings, or anyone. So I went through all 4 trials by myself for months. When the one floor recessed, I went to the next floor. There was a family member that came up there that was looking for me. They came up there to do a bomb threat. They found me. They locked me up in the marriage license certificate at the office at the time. There was another guy that was following me on the elevator. And I heard the voice of God again say, when that door opened up, get off. And I stood there and it opened. This tall detective walked in. When he walked in, I jumped out and the Lord said, now. And I jumped off. I went through the stairs. So as I'm going down the staircase, he got off the next floor and I heard the door above me shut. He started following me through the stairwell, but they found me and then they got me and then they had, made sure I was secure and safe. There was some that was coming up to my school, Votech school, for training for CNA. They was putting sticky notes on my car, my windshield. There was some that was putting sticky notes on my locker. It was a lot. I went through a lot just because I was the only one that stood up to see this thing all the way to the end.
Wow.
When they did do what they did, not knowing that she was already deceased, she has a goddaughter that was a caseworker, and she was the one that placed majority of the kids in our home. Her and her friend was walking in the neighborhood off Webb Road about 5 in the morning, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and they saw a body, but she had no way of knowing it was her body. All three of them, did what they did, to her, with her and everything, all but one. The youngest one was the only one that did not sexually assault her. The youngest one, he was the only one that did not sexually assault her. But the other three did.
There's just no sense in all of that. It's crazy.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, absolutely. How old was she?
She was 42.
Yeah.
She was 42.
Wow.
She had just turned 42 May. She was in her last semester to be a social worker at WSU. She was in school. She was in her very last semester.
So was it just random that they got her?
Yeah.
Or was it planned? It was random.
I still believe that the uncle had something to do with it, because it was just kind of funny how they showed up to try to sell a VCR. And he acted like he didn't know who his nephew was. He acted like he didn't know who his sister was. So I still kind of feel like it had to been planned. That's just me, because you called her earlier to take you to the store, and she did. And then around 7 o'clock, you called back.
So now, did the uncle get in trouble?
No, they let him go because they claimed he was a victim because he got stabbed. And then before the court started, he moved to California, packed up and moved to California.
Yeah, well, moving doesn't stop somebody if they're going to come get you. So
that's true. That's true.
Especially if it's there. So how much time did these guys get?
Well, for her case, Nola Folsom, the district attorney, gave them the hard 40, but they done stuff to people that Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday during the day. So they got charged for those crimes as well.
Oh my goodness.
It was like a birthday celebration, as they say, is what they were doing. It's like
they didn't get life.
No. They got charged for the other crimes, but on hers alone, they got 40 years just for her.
So you take a life, but you don't have to give your life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I tell people, I was just telling my in-law just yesterday was talking about the death penalty and stuff. And I told her, I said, I don't agree with the death penalty. And I told her the reason why I don't, because I feel like that's a cop-out. That's a giving them a way out of what it was that they done, of not looking at the four walls or being reminded that they took a life, and to me, that's just like, it's just a cop-out, giving them a way out so they won't be here to think about it or have to be reminded every day, of what they did. When I do remember the day that he walked in, the oldest one, the day that he walked into the courtroom, I looked like her. So he kind of jumped a little bit, kind of like it did like a double take kind of look. And when he did that, and I looked dead at him, and I do remember saying, I said, I look just like her, huh? And he couldn't say anything.
Wow.
He cussed the judge out. He cussed the news people out. He even cussed his own attorney out. But when I had the chance to get up and speak, he just sat there, and couldn't say anything though. But yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to think, if I was in your shoes, how hard it would be for me to forgive them. So talk through that process. How long did it take for you to actually forgive them?
It was a long time. I want to say from the time that it happened, from 90 to the Lord started dealing with me. I want to say around 2005, 2000. I started having some health problems. But then 2005, he really started dealing with me about it. But I wasn't trying to hear it. I wasn't trying to accept it. So the more I kept fighting against it, sickness was falling up on me. And I still wasn't willing to do it. I had a major operation in 2006. Then I turned around 6 months after that. I had another major operation. 2003 first, then 2006. Then I had another operation in 2007, which was 6 months prior from the one I just previously had. So they lost me in surgery. It was the day for my birthday, January the 16th. My birthday is the 17th, and they ended up losing me. And God brought me back, and I was upset about that because I was like, why you bring me back? But when I started realizing it was a reason why you brought me back, because what the work he's given me has not been completed yet and has not been done. So he really started dealing with me then when I was going through recovery. And I still slightly was kind of still saying, I'm not going to do that. So one day I was in my apartment and he took me to Psalms 91. So I started reading Psalms 91. He started dealing with me about that. And I'm like, oh, God. I said, okay, God. So I got a notebook. I got a piece of paper. And I started writing out a forgiveness towards them, letting them know that I forgive them in my words and stuff. So I do remember contacting Channel 12. Contacted Channel 3 at first, and the lady that was there wasn't there anymore. So I contacted Channel 12. They sent a reporter out, and I'm like, I don't know if I can do this because my family's gonna be upset with me, which they was. Her sisters and stuff, which they were. And I'm like, they're gonna stop talking to me. They're not gonna understand, what it is that I'm doing. I'm like, I don't even understand what I'm doing. So after that interview, I shut down because I still felt like I was betraying the love I had for her. And it's like, how can I do something like this? So one day I was late to the doctor's office, and one of the ladies at the church was late picking me up. And I was upset. And I said, I know I don't like being late to my appointments. I said, I'm just going to call and cancel. She said, no, sis, don't do that. Call them and tell them I'm on my way. I said, no, I'm going to just cancel. She said, you're so stubborn. Don't do that. So I said, okay, we made it. So as I walked in this doctor's office and I checked in and I sat down, this news reporter, this new lady was on the phone, her cell phone, talking to a coworker. She was a new lady at Channel 12. So I'm sitting there just listening. And she said, I'm looking off into the story to the lady, Miss Johnson, the lady that was murdered and her body was found at the park. And I'm sitting there like, what? So after she got the phone and I said, excuse me, I said, are you talking about Rosanna Pat Mitchell? It was Pat Johnson. And she said, yeah. She said, do you know her? I said, yes, I do. I said, that's my mommy. I'm her daughter. And she said, oh, what? So that's how it all started from there. And I said, and my sister, she said, that's why it was not meant for you to cancel your appointment. That's why you needed to be here. So the connection started from there. Went on the news, did a videotape. They reached out to the warden. They contacted each one of them. The other 3 were out of state. They still said they didn't want to see me, but the youngest one did. He was 15 at the time. My heart went out towards him more. I don't know. It's because he was the youngest. And I kind of felt like his life was wasted. His life was gone. He just wasted his life. He's been in prison at the age of 15.
Wow.
So he was the only one that agreed to see me because he felt like he owed me that. So sure. I went through a program in Topeka, Kansas called Victims' Rights Services. The 2 ladies came to visit me and they said it would be about a year or 2 years process. Are you sure? And I said, yeah. I was like, that'll give me time to get myself together. I want to say, I think we met 3 times and I want to say it was about 3 months. So the 4th month she called me and said, Sherry, are you ready? I was at the bottom of the list. And I said, ready for what? And she said, for the meeting. I said, wait a minute. You said it's going to be a year or 2. I said, it's only been 3 months. And she said, you was at the bottom. And it was, to me, it was like God literally just came and just took everybody's name off the list that was before me and put my name at the top of the list. She said, wow. We're ready to go. So they came back to Wichita to meet with me, to go through the process. They came back again twice and she said, okay, we're ready. Meet us in El Dorado. So me and my god sister, we went. They went with me as my support, person. We walked in the room. Channel 12 couldn't go in. They had to stay outside and to interview me after I left. And then they said, well, we'll be through probably about 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes. I want to say end up being almost a 3-hour visit.
Woo-wee.
3-hour visit. The first time we went in there, when I went in there and I seen his shirt and I backed up and I said, oh no, I can't go in there just yet. So they said, just get yourself together. I did. Finally went in there. What nothing before in front of us, just sitting across the table. That was it.
That was all of this in Wichita?
Mm-hmm. In El Dorado, Kansas. He had his two support people with him. I had my two with me plus my god sister. So I had three people that was with me. The tension was tight in the room. So I told my god sister, I said, wait a minute, before we get started, I said, do you mind if we pray? And they said no. So I told her to pray, and she prayed. Tension still wasn't right. So I said, okay, about 30 minutes. I said, no. I said, I got to go to the restroom for a minute. So she accompanied me to the restroom. We both went. I said, I need you to pray again. And she prayed with me in the restroom. And it took me a minute. By the time we went back into the room, I can literally felt the presence, the heaviness was gone. It was gone. So I sat back down. We sat there. I answered everything. I answered. I asked him, and he answered everything. He said, I felt like I asked him why. He said, because I felt like I owed you that. He said, the man that I am today, I wish I was that man back then, even if it would have cost him his life, but he was only 15 years old.
Wow. So what was your mother's name?
Rosanna Pat Johnson. It's actually Mitchell. Rosanna Pat Mitchell. Everybody called her Patsy or Pat.
Okay.
So we sat there, we talked. Like I said, been 3 hours. By the time the visit was over with, I'm asking all these questions, tears just rolling down my face as he's answering them. And it's like, oh my God. I say, God, you sure? I was like, why you put me through this? I'm like, why? I'm like, why? So after it was over with, I extended my hand out to shake his hand. And the Lord said, embrace him. I said, I turned around with my back to him. I said, you got to be crazy. I said, you must be wrong.
I don't mean to laugh.
I said, I'm not about to embrace this boy. I said, you crazy. So I turned back around, extended my hand out again. And the Lord said, I said, embrace him. I turned back around again. I said, yeah, you definitely smoking sheetrock because I'm not about to embrace this man. I said, you crazy. Turned back around. I put my hand out again. When I put my hand out again, he grabbed it and just laid his head on my shoulder and just broke down crying like a baby.
Wow. So when will these guys get out? And how do you feel about that? Because
for her case,
yes.
I want to say one of them is maybe 2038.
Because that'll be here before we know it.
Yeah, I think one is 35. The only thing I pray and hope, and I really do, that they actually change from it, not getting out to cause more harm to other people.
Right.
That's the only thing that's what my wish is, what my prayer is, that they're not getting out and causing harm. But I feel like if you're still doing things in prison, you're still getting in trouble in prison, you're still doing things in prison, to me, you haven't learned nothing. Because you should be advocating to help younger generation that's coming in, to be able to help them, to be able to lead them to do better, to do different. And if I see that you're still doing stuff yourself and you're not doing that, I feel like you haven't changed.
Sherry.
Yes, sir.
And I don't want to, get too deep down in what you've spoke about, because I'm sure the pain, to be perfectly frank, I can't even fathom what you've been through for that period of time. And it's interesting that it took you 15 years to get you where God, what you were willing to actually take that step.
Yes, sir.
What I have found in my own life, and so I just want to ask this question of you: do you have to forgive them daily?
I do.
And I think that's important for people to hear.
I do.
Because we think a lot of times we think forgiveness is just instant. It's over. I forgave you. I'm done. And again, I don't even want to act like I've been what you've been through, because I have no way of knowing. But I know in my own situations, I have seen that I had to continue to forgive someone for what they've done. And in your situation, I mean, when I heard you say, I hope they don't get out, I can tell that that's a burden that I know you've laid at God's feet.
Mm-hmm.
but you have to, he constantly puts his wings around you. It says it's okay to forgive.
Mm-hmm.
Give again. Forgive again. Forgive again.
Yes.
And that's to me, that's a daily deal a lot of times. And I don't think people really realize that.
Yes, it
I
is.
like your story to the King David when he saw Bathsheba.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you go later in the book, in Samuel, it talks about his son Absalom resented him for what he's done.
Yes.
Kicked him out of the country, but David had to continue to forgive and forgive and forgive because that was his son.
Yes.
And then obviously, Absalom, the story, Absalom gets hung on a tree.
Mm-hmm.
So I see that you have to go to the cross. Probably, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. That's not fair. But you want to go to the cross daily to forgive. You have to forgive.
I do.
And so I think that's important for people to really understand that it's just not one time.
No.
This is a constant, I don't want to say burden because God has your burden, but it's something that's a reality to your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you could speak on that, on how that really you have to work through that, because I think there's a lot of people would love to know, coming from you, that you actually forgave this terrible travesty and you have to continue to do it.
I do.
I don't mind. I don't know if you mind sharing about that or if that's too deep or.
No, I do. By me not forgiving when I didn't want to, it brought sickness up on me. Not realizing I was hurting myself, not realizing the forgiveness wasn't for them, it was for me. It took me a very long time to forgive, to understand that and to get that. God was trying to tell me that, but I was just too stubborn. And the thing that I heard him say was, how dare you with your self-righteous self? I literally heard that.
Right.
If I can forgive those that they done what they did for me, I asked my Father, forgive them, for they knew not what they were doing. Who do you think you are? I literally heard God call me self-righteous. I really heard God call me, tell me that. When sickness started coming against me and I was in the hospital so much, I was being taken to the hospital. I went and admitted myself in the mental institution because they was looking for me to admit me. So I went and committed myself to keep them from doing it. And then they felt like I shouldn't have gotten out the way that I did because I literally they claimed I was a danger to myself and to society. Not knowing everything that I was dealing with, everything that I was going through, I was already a hard person to deal with. But after that happened, I hear other people's story, and I hear them say it turned them to God. It made them go to God. It didn't me. It just made me worse.
But in the end, it sounds like you have turned. You sound like you did turn.
I did eventually.
Sometimes that hardness of our heart, he's the only one that can soften it.
Exactly. And that's why I tell people today, people can't, I told someone just the other day, Sunday coming home from church, she was bringing me home, and I was sharing some things with her about my past. And I said, if you really want to change, God is still changing me, but I'm nowhere near the person that I used to be. And I told her, I said, no one cannot tell me God is not able to change you. But holding on to that unforgiveness, I didn't realize how much damaging I was doing to myself. I didn't realize it until I had my last operation. And then I kind of got it a minute, and then I went right back to the old. Then I started going back, holding on to it. Like, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. I can't do this. You can do it. You can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. But I still kept telling myself, I don't want to do it. Ain't that I can't do it. I had to realize and tell myself, to be honest, you don't want to do it. So I wanted to hold on to that. And I was using that as a crutch to keep me from growing, to keep me from changing, to keep me from being the woman of God that God was trying to get me to. How can you talk about my goodness? How can you talk about me and you still holding on to all of this?
Right.
Doing it. You can't share nothing with nobody and you're not doing or walking in what it is that you're supposed to be walking in. You can't do it. You can't. So when he told me, I literally took a tragedy, a situation, and turned a tragedy into a triumph. Then he said, selfish. Told me I was selfish, and I didn't understand that. He said she gave her life up so you can live.
Ooh. Mm-hmm.
That's
That
powerful.
that broke me. She gave up. Gave her. He said, "You've been selfish this whole time, worrying about thinking about nobody but yourself, not knowing this is not even about you. This is bigger than you." But she gave her life up so you can live. You've been really selfish right about now. When are you going to get? You going to keep using this to keep you from growing, or are you going to let go and learn how to and learn how to stand on what it is, what's right? You can't speak to tell people something, and you're not like no. So I didn't want to. I didn't. I fought for so long of not letting go of forgiveness. And every day I'm learning now to ask him to forgive me for the knowing and the unknowing. If I'm holding on to anything, harboring anything, please forgive me, because there was times I wouldn't even do that. But now daily I find myself daily asking God that. Whether I knew I sinned or not, it didn't matter to me. That's just who I was. I was one that he was a man. So I had problems with men's authority or telling me what it is I can do, what I can't do. So I looked at it as, you're a man. I'm not going to let you tell me what to do and what not to do until I learn how to love him for myself and get in a relationship with him for myself. She had a relationship with him. She had one. She would, when I used to leave home or get ready to leave home, she would make me strip search because she knew I always had something hid. I was always carrying something. And then she'll go out and search my car. And I'm like, this God that you praying to, you need to quit praying to him. I said, he need to quit showing you where I'm had my stuff at. Because you always know where my stuff is at when I need it in a time of a situation. I said,
I don't mean to laugh.
it's never there. So I said, this God you praying to. So one day I was leaving home and, my hair was up in this high bun and it had all these curls and stuff and was getting ready to go out. And she said, my brother said, well, surely she ain't got nothing in her hair, mama. You must don't know your sister. And she said, take that ponytail, hold it down. I said, mama, we're about to be late. Take it down. Took one down. Oh, you got another one. Take it down. Took that second one. Oh, you got another one. Took it down. And when I did, the box cutter, when my hair went like this, the box cutter just fell and hit the floor.
I'm sorry that I'm laughing.
My brother hit the floor and he said, my mama said, I told you she had something in her head because her ponytail was up too high. She had too many pin curls in it. I knew she had something in her hair. But to be a person, like that, to live the life that I did, and even after that happened to her, I was so angry. I was so mad. I started doing stuff. I even became a gang member myself.
Oh, wow. So you could have been sitting in prison right alongside of him.
I became one myself.
How long were you involved in the gangs?
This happened to her in 90. I want to say I left Wichita in 94, came to Oklahoma City. I went back in 97. So within that time.
Wow. And what year did she pass?
She passed away in 1990.
1990. Okay.
My house got my
4 years you were still angry and you went into the gang life yourself.
Yeah, my car got shot up sitting in it. My home got shot up, laying in the bed, bullets flying all in the bed. And not realizing God was protecting me.
But you're still alive. So let me ask you this, although you seems like you were fighting it, maybe the death of your mother is what God, if she was already a believer, we know where she's at.
Yes.
Maybe this was his wake-up call to get you. He knew this was what it was going to take to get you.
Yes. It took a long time for me to get that. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. It took a long time for me to get that. It took a long time because I didn't understand the person that she was. How could something like this happen to her? She had just got back from Hawaii with some girlfriends. And I stayed home and kept the foster kids while she left. And she had made a comment. She said, keep the kids good. I come back, every one of them's alive. The house ain't burnt down. You ain't killed none of them. She was like, I got something for you. I said, okay. So she came back. All the kids was all counted for. The house wasn't burnt down. So she said, we're going to go to Las Vegas. Her and another girlfriend. And I said, I got to stay home and keep these kids again. And she said, no, I'm going to take you because you did good. And we were supposed to be leaving in the middle of August. And she had just purchased another home, a bigger home, to take in more foster kids.
Wow.
We was in a 4-bedroom. And I want to say the most kids we had in a 4-bedroom was 15 kids.
How many?
15.
15?
Besides my 2. The rest was foster kids. Total 15 kids.
Oh.
Yes. Back then, they didn't allow kids laying on the floor on a pallet or nothing like that. But no one in Wichita wanted to take them. So they override her because they knew they called her at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. She was going to get up and say, yes, bring them. So
it kind of sounds like to me, remember that movie? That movie just came out like a year or 2 ago about that whole town adopting all them kids.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, man. Boy, you want to talk about bringing a little bit some tears to your eye. It will do it. The whole town stood up and adopted. All by a pastor saying it. So where are you at now far as in your journey that you would like to say to other people that may be feeling the same things that you're feeling? Because I see people a lot of times that are in the same situation or even a lighter situation where we see it as a badge of honor to hold on to that bitterness and that anger and that frustration, that hate. And we see it as a badge of honor, but you were released from that badge of honor. You threw open your jail cell and you walked out. So how would you want to share with other people? What's the next step for Sherry and how you would communicate to others how to get through this?
To let them know it's not worth holding on to. To let them know that they can be free. For so long, I didn't realize that the forgiveness was for me. And then when I realized that, it started freeing me of things started falling off of me. I started getting my health was starting to come back together, but for so long, it was gone. But in order to be able to tell people that it's better to let go and it's better to move on and to trust God, because the only person that can bring you through is God. If you don't have him, you're not gonna make it. If you ain't got God, you're not gonna make it. You're just not.
So what is your personality like now compared to where it was?
It's better. It's better because then I didn't like people. I didn't talk to people. I didn't smile. When I went to this one church and the pastor, she said, "Oh my God, I didn't know you had any teeth because we never seen your teeth because you never smile." So I was like, "Huh?" She said, "You never smile." I said, "Are you serious?" She said, "You never smile." She said, "You come to church Sunday after Sunday, sit there in that front chair." And she said, "You never would smile." I didn't like people and I didn't associate with people. I didn't talk to people. So now, have a good night. Have a blessed night. So now I enjoy God is still working with me on it because he said people is not going to know what I've done for you and what I've done through you if you don't open up and if you don't open your mouth up and you don't share. For so long, all I did was sat on it. I wouldn't say nothing. He said, in order to free yourself, you got to share it. You got to open your mouth up and you got to talk about it. He said, when you talk about it, the more you talk about it, the more it's going to free you up. The more it's going to help you and get you to a place. He said, I sit here, I talk to him all the time, but it's like there still was like a hole. He said, when you open your mouth up and begin, and I was like, well, I don't talk like everybody. I said, I don't pronounce words like everybody. And it was like a hinder as well. You worried about all that other stuff. He said, but when you begin to share my goodness and talk about what I have done for you and how I have gotten you to the place where you are now, he said, and talk about the good or either the bad, he said, people will begin to be healed. The book came in place it was always the power of forgiveness. And I was at a church, God moved me from there. And I was looking at my bedroom window and I heard God say, that's not what I gave you. Because we allowed her to change it all would come together in the end. I said, that's a good topic. But when God moved me from that ministry, God said, that's not what I gave you. He said, it was always the power of forgiveness. He said, but I want you to add embracing, because you finally start to embrace something that you couldn't have embraced without me. He said, so I need you to put embracing the power of forgiveness. I started this book back in 94 and I kept picking it up, putting it down. And I thought I wasn't good enough. I said, I can't do it. I can't write no book. December the 27th of 2022, my granddaughter was here visiting from Christmas break from Wichita. She came to my bedroom. She said, Nana, what happened to the book? I don't want to talk about that right now. I said, I'll get to it. She said, no, Nana. She said, you got to get that book finished. I said, I will. I looked at it on my table, looked at it, got up, got it, put it on my bed. Okay, God, what you want me to do with it? God came in on December the 28th, 2022, and rewrote the whole entire book. By the second week of February, I was emailing it to the publisher in 2023. My mommy's birthday was May the 22nd of 2023. She said, I'm releasing the book on your mommy's birthday. I said, okay. So I didn't think you remembered. She said, I did. The book came out May the 22nd, 2023.
How'd that feel?
It felt good. I couldn't believe it. God gave her her name is Paula, the publisher. God gave her the vision, and she executed the vision. She did what God gave her. God put that book together. Nobody couldn't put it together better than he could. I had my first book signing here July the 22nd. I mean, not July 22nd, July the 15th of 2023. And the Lord said, you got to go to Wichita. I said, I ain't going back to Kansas. I said, no, I ain't doing that. I said, no.
I love it.
No. I said, no, End up doing just what God said. I was in the kitchen one day cooking on FaceTime with my grandbaby, and I screamed. She said, Nana, what's wrong? What's wrong? Did you hurt yourself? I said, no. She said, what happened? I said, oh my God, baby. I said, tears started rolling down my face. I said, the book signing in Wichita was July the 22nd, 2023. It fell on the same exact anniversary on the day that she was taken. She was killed July 22nd, 1990. The book signing was July 22nd, 2023 in Wichita, Kansas. Later. The book signing was at 7 p.m. She was kidnapped at 7 p.m.
Wow.
I came home. I slipped off into depression because there was a lot. I put the book down. I said, couple months after that, God started dealing with me. I said, okay, God, I can do this. So I started speaking life back into the book. And I said, you wrote that book for a reason. If I'm not ready, then get me ready, because I'm the only one that can tell her story. I'm the only one that can share it. Her story became my story.
I agree 100%.
So I'm waiting now to see what God is going to do with it, because so many people needs to know, if you just trust God and allow yourself to go through the process of healing, you don't have to keep holding on something. I don't care if it's 6 months. I don't care if it's 3 months. I don't care if it's 4, 5 years. I don't care if it's 10 or 15 years. If you really want to be free from it, and people say we can't be free from it, you can be free from it if you allow yourself. And I heard what you said earlier, sir. I'll never forget what happened.
Mm-hmm.
I would never forget. But I'm not allowing that to hold me back to where I can't move forward and I can't go forward in God. I can't do it no more. I can't. My son was 1.5 years. He was affected by that. He's 30-something now, and in a way, he's still affected by that.
Wow.
She was like his mom.
Yeah.
We were like brothers and sisters. He didn't know me as mom. He knew her. So he's still affected by that to this day. And not understanding how I got to the place that I am. And I tells him, it wasn't me, it was God. You know, Mother's Day is coming up next month. Her birthday is next month. And I was sitting in my room, and I just broke down crying. I didn't only try to commit suicide, 1, 2, 3, 4 times. I tried to commit suicide 6 times.
Oh my goodness.
And God kept
That's
me.
Behind you.
2018, just 2020, was it 2023 or 2022? Just last year, my birthday, I sat on the side of my bed and I counted out a whole row of pills. I had them all in a row. I got up that morning. It was on a Sunday morning. I got up that morning. I got up at 8. I got in the shower and I sat on the side of my bed and I got a cup of water on my table. And as I went to pick the first pill up to put in my mouth, I heard the Lord said, "Don't stop." I wrote a note and everything. I had a note and everything. I knew when my family come, they was gonna find the note and find me. And I heard the Lord say, "Don't stop." And I slid off the side of my bed and I fell on the floor and I just bust out crying in tears. And I told God, I said, this is getting hard. It's hard to go each day knowing that someone that carried me for 9 months, even though I was a bad kid, she loved me unconditionally. She loved me no matter what. And to know that the love that I had from her is not here no more, it hurts. It still hurts every day. So every day I have to check myself and remind myself not to go back to that mindset of picking that back up and holding on to that.
Wow.
Of not wanting to say, okay, Sherry, my aunt stopped talking to me for about almost a year because of it. Some of my other family members quit talking to me because they didn't understand what I was doing. I didn't understand what it was that I was doing, but I knew God wanted me to do this. Then when the book came out, that's when everybody was like, she has lost her mind.
I could see where people could think that and worry that you might have temporarily.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Sherry, I hate to end on this note, but we only have so much recording airtime.
Okay.
Yeah, our show can only be 56 minutes, so I'll come up with an ending here. Brian, I'm going to let you do the ending. We usually ask you a question, you answer it, and then we go from there.
I don't know that I'm going to ask you a question, so I'm going to break the rules.
Okay.
I'm going to more or less make a statement, if you will, and please don't get jaded by what I say.
Okay, no problem.
But it definitely shows me that God has something different for you and a plan different for you, and he's not finished yet with that. And there's so many other people. There's so many things that I could say to you that you could help other people in the world. Because I know I hope that 10 people, just even if one person when they see this, that it impacts their lives and it's a journey they start on. You have to, Sherry, it's a must that you get out there, because I think God's taking you to the woodshed all the time to say, you got to get out there and tell what I've done for you, not about your mom, what I've done for you about this forgiveness. And there's somebody, including myself, we all need that. And so
I think this story does need to shift from your mom to you. Brian, you're absolutely right.
So if I hurt your feelings, I'm sorry.
No,
intentional, but you need to take that step, because I'm telling you what, God ain't gonna give you peace with that. He's gonna keep coming with it. You embrace that, because it's not about you. It's about paying it forward and helping somebody else.
Yes, sir.
That's being in your shoes, and that person that being in shoes may be 10 years old.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And
so I'm sorry if I get a little passionate.
No,
people need to know there's life after this.
Yes,
and there's life for you to really get to that next step of freeing yourself from that, the bondage that you've taken that initial step of forgiveness.
Yes, sir.
Now there's one more step. There's one more step. I look at it as Rocky Balboa. I got one more round. So that's all I have.
Yes, sir.
Man, what a blessing. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So if they want to go get your book, where can they find that at?
They can find it on Amazon. It is also on Walmart website and Barnes and Noble.
Name of it?
Embracing the Power of Forgiveness.
Wow.
It's in English and in Spanish.
Wow.
Let me show it to you. This is the book.
Okay.
And all 3 photos up top is her. And then one in the back with me and her when I was a teenager.
Okay.
But that's the book.
Beautiful.
Thank you. That's all that's all really I can say, Sherry, is thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for the opportunity.
And keep in mind, God's not done with you. You're still here.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
You still have a purpose, and I would love to see you just thrive in that purpose.
Yes, ma'am.
So, well, thank you, Sherry. Guys, reach out, support her by getting the book, and stay tuned for more episodes coming up soon on From Felon to Fabulous. Or do you want to be the person that's helpful, that soothes, that loves? Because you can still stand tall and be as big as you want to be when you are this person.